Okay, so welcome to this special webinar. My name is Dr. Stephen Sussman, and I am a professor of public administration in the Andreas School of Business and Public Administration at BRI University in Miami, and co-founder of the Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research. Luis Fleischman and I, along with a team of dedicated colleagues, at least one of whom is online today, established the center as an outlet for the marketplace of ideas. The Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research is a nonpartisan public policy organization, a research center, and a think tank. We are a gathering of scholars, experts, and community stakeholders engaged in research and dialogue in an effort to create practical policy recommendations to current local, national, and international challenges. Therefore, the center encourages discussion and research from multiple perspectives. We believe that good policy is the result of reasonable dialogue and healthy debate. We believe in the marketplace of ideas. Thus, through publishing balanced articles and community engagement, such as tonight's webinar, the center aspires to provide a platform for critical thinking, analysis, and ideas to confront challenges that affect our world. Our core values of diversity, balance, and community define us and set us apart from other organizations. As an organization, we value diverse voices and views and see it as a means to create a healthy debate. The center provides a balanced platform where civilized communication, exchange of ideas, and inclusion prevail over party politics and dogmatic views. Our objective is to be a community and place of gathering for academics, professionals, elected officials, decision makers, civil society groups, and leaders. Please visit our website at palmbeachdemocracy.org. On the site, you will find links to our past webinars. Recent webinars include a program on the cryptocurrency and its connection to foreign policy, academic scholarship versus ideology, the intersection of national security and the Florida tech ecosystem, analysis of the Middle East peace process, and many more. On our website, you will also find a donation button. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Through your generous donations, we are able to bring you important and timely programs and articles. Tonight, the Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research is thrilled to present a compelling webinar titled The Belt and Road Initiative and Its Implications. Our distinguished speaker, Marcelo Mink, advises governments, international organizations, and the private sector on all aspects of policies, procedures, and operations of multinational development and multilateral development and financing. Luis Fleischman will serve as the moderator and provide a more detailed background for our distinguished speaker. It will be a question-answer format tonight between Luis and Marcelo. We welcome your questions. You can write your question in the chat box. You can also email it to me at shim613@gmail.com. That's shim613@gmail. Or preferably, when we are ready for questions, you can just raise your hand, either virtually or otherwise. So with that, I will turn this over to Luis.
Okay, terrific. Steve, thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. Just one more announcement that I want to make is that on Friday, September 22nd at 5:30 p.m., we are going to have our next program where Dr. Robert Raville, Professor Robert Raville of Florida Atlantic University, is going to present his new book called Lebanon and Turkey. It's an excellent book. I had the honor to be one of the reviewers for the book, for the editorial, for the publisher. And it's a fantastic book. He will make the presentation right here through Zoom on September 22nd at 5:30 p.m. Looking forward to having you again on September 22nd. Now, another thing that I want to say about the speaker that we have tonight, not only that the topic is extremely important because it's related to how China is using its economic might to basically increase its political clout in the world. But there is another thing about the speaker, which is Marcelo Ming is a resident of Palm Beach County. He lives in West Palm Beach. And that shows you what this institution, this center is trying to do, is trying to gather the local intellect, and usually our local intellect is also a cosmopolitan intellect. It's intellect that is coming from New York or is coming from all over the world. In the case of Marcelo, as Steve pointed out, Marcelo Ming advises governments, international organizations, and the private sector on all aspects of policies, procedures, and operations of multilateral development and financing. For over 35 years, Marcelo has acquired professional experience in over 40 countries in Asia and the Pacific, also in Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Africa, planning and implementing development investment programs with the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, and the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. In 2021, namely 2 years ago, Mr. Ming concluded a 24-year tenure at the Asian Development Bank, holding leadership positions of procurement advisor, lead portfolio manager, and notably country director in Papua New Guinea. Earlier in his career, his work centered in planning, financing, and operating large infrastructure projects. Mr. Ming holds postgraduate degrees in civil engineering from the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina, and transport planning economics, a master's degree from transport planning and economics from Virginia Tech. He is a trained mediator, trained at the Hong Kong Center for International Arbitration, and has obtained leadership certifications from Harvard Business School and the University of Cambridge in England. Now, Cambridge University in England. Now, one important thing to say, Marcelo is speaking from Manila, the Philippines. So he's basically at the center where things actually happen related to the topic that he's going to discuss. The way we are going to conduct this program is I'll be asking a few questions to Marcelo. He will answer my questions, and then in the end, it will be open to questions from the audience. You can basically intervene orally, that's what we prefer, or write your questions on the chat, okay? So, Marcelo, welcome. Let me ask you the first question. What is the Belt and Road Initiative? Can you explain that to us? And what is its purpose? How does it fit Xi Jinping's agenda in general? The floor is yours. You are mute, Marcelo, you are mute. Unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening to all. First of all, let me thank the, Luis and the Center for Palm Beach Center for Democracy and Policy Research for providing this opportunity. I think we have a good audience here with other professionals that have done similar kind of work as I did. So I expect to have, not just giving a lecture or talking, but to have a good exchange and to basically put some light in the subject, which is of concern to all of us. So yes, so Luis, let me just tell you what is the Belt and Road Initiative. So basically, this is the world's largest infrastructure program and Xi Jinping's signature foreign policy undertaking. Now, this was launched in 2013, and since then, the Chinese banks and companies have financed and built everything from power plants, railways, highways, and ports, telecommunications infrastructure, fiber optic cables, smart cities around the world. Now, originally, the Belt and Road Initiative, we'll call it BRI, all along, just to simplify a bit, was initially designed to connect China's modern coastal cities to the underdeveloped interior, to the southeast central parts of the country, and mainly to the west. Now, then it moved to connecting China with the southeast, central, and South Asian neighbors. And again, the idea, as already mentioned, is to cement China's position at the center of a more connected world. But of course, since then, the initiative has outgrown the regional corridors, expanding to all corners in the world. I would say today we have around 155 countries that have something to do with this. Now, if all the original plans and the ideas are implemented sustainably and responsibly, of course, the BRI has the potential to meet long-standing developing country needs and spur economic growth. Now, on a more anecdotal note, this also has a catch in terms of going back to a bit of nostalgia here to the historic reminiscence of the Silk Road that used to link the Far East with Europe. And of course, in the future, there are other ideas like building or linking together something called the digital Silk Road, which of course includes the communications. And I mean, you hear sometimes in the media about these 5G network contracts, including for the US, not only for developing countries. Now, let me just put it in a bit more general terms. So again, the idea was to closing the gap between the country's affluent coastal cities and its impoverished interior, thus boosting domestic political stability. Then this is very important, and will come later, is absorbing China's excess manufacturing capacity. All right. Then also putting all the accumulated savings to work. China has a big rate of savings, even for individuals. That's, I guess, part of the culture. And also importantly, securing a consistent source of inputs and commodities for the manufacturing sector. And of course, last but not least, is to reorient global commerce away from the United States, Western Europe, and other allies towards China. Now, let me just conclude the first answer with this: that today, of course, the risks that this implies to the U.S. allies and recipient countries, have increased quite a bit, outweighing the benefits, and of course, it signifies a challenge to economic, political, climate change, security, and global health interest of the rest of the world. So let me just stop here and
okay.
give it back.
Very good, very interesting. Now, the second question, another question that I have for you is, which countries have opened to Belt and Road? Are these third world countries mainly? And in addition, what can you give us examples of the projects that are being implemented through BRI? And last but not least, what kind of benefits the Belt and Road Initiative has brought to the countries themselves, right? What benefits and other consequences that are not necessarily benefits?
Well, that's quite a difficult question to answer. First, I mean, again, I was trying to, while preparing this talk, I thought I just check, how many countries, I was thinking maybe 40, 50, but as I mentioned, it's 155. So this, I can tell you, I was myself surprise. And this also has to do with something that I will refer later: the lack of transparency. There are not too much media on the initiative for different reasons. For some countries, it is. For some countries, you do not know. There are separate agreements. So, but when I saw 155, I mean, that's quite a number. And it's not only developing countries. There are developed countries. I will mention it later. Now, according to the American Enterprise Institute, the value of BRI's investment and construction combined since its inception amounts to $966 billion. So also, please don't be surprised. I mean, we are almost at the $1 trillion mark. Now, again, just also to show you about how difficult it is to get data on the subject. This probably I leave it for the academics for later on, but the way that, for example, the American Enterprise Institute, counts as investment and construction as something separate, which I couldn't get any deeper explanation, but maybe some double counting, because basically the money for investment eventually goes back to China with the construction when they hire Chinese contractors, right? But again, the amounts are just again, I'm not an academic. I mean, I just want to raise eyebrows with this. Now, again, the idea was, as I mentioned before, and let me reiterate, is the hope was that these funds would increase, exports, access to land-based and maritime transport facilities, boost the manufacturing and construction industry, strengthen economic and political and military influence abroad. But likewise, for the countries, for the recipients, again, the idea was that they could also, increase their trade due to the new facilities, have more access to not only to China but to other, countries, and also boost their economies. I mean, again, when things go well, when the ideas are good, and if they are implemented properly, I think we will all benefit. So I cannot have too much criticism on that. However, as of today, many of the investments have failed to generate sufficient returns, and then creates a big problem, which is what we call the debt trap. All right, so the countries are not able to return the loans or the monies given by China to pay for their debts, and then they go into a debt trap. Now, should I continue, Luis, with the country example? So you want to ask something more
whatever you
general?
want to expand on this. So are you saying at this point what you said is that some countries actually fail to pay debts, but part
Yes.
of the Belt and Road Initiative is also that the Chinese banks are providing these loans, right? They are the ones
Yes.
giving
Correct. Correct.
Now, there have been cases, as far as I know, that apparently the Chinese companies that actually are investing, okay, many of them are tied to the government. They are not exactly private, they are not really private initiatives, but they are tied to the government, and BRI is basically a government initiative. But we are hearing also about environmental problems, right? The Chinese companies are not taking into account environmental needs, right? They are polluting, and in addition, very often they are undermining local life. Is that correct? Or the life of the local?
Let me. Luis, I think yes. Let me just give you some examples, and let the audience make their conclusions. All right. So let me just tell you some facts. But to some extent, you are correct. Okay, let's start with the case of Sri Lanka. The huge amounts were borrowed, about 7-8 years ago, and they had some major infrastructure projects built. One of them is the Colombo City Port. Another one is the Hambantota port, which is Colombo is the capital. All right, so this would be at the center west of the country, while the Hambantota port is at the south, is closer to the southern tip of Sri Lanka. So the location is very strategic, incredibly. And also the new airport was built, and also there was one of these pride projects, which is the Colombo Lotus Tower, that later you might Google and look at the images. It's quite amazing, but I'm not sure this contributes to development. Now, what's happening is that Sri Lanka was not able to pay the debt, which went up to 10 billion US dollars. And of course, in these discussions with China now, they do have some say about the use of the port of Hambantota, which again is a very strategic location. And the reason they have some say on it is because the Sri Lankan government was forced to hand it over to the Chinese companies on a 99-year lease in 2017. All right, and of course, we saw the outcry of many countries because basically China owns now. There are construction firms which, as you say, Luis, are somehow linked to the government, and basically they have a use of this very strategic facility, and of course there are fears of military use.
Slower, but I don't know that she's eating less. I don't know.
Sorry, does anybody have a question?
No. Yes, if anybody has a question or something, please, you can do it now. I'm continuing to ask you. I continue to ask you questions. At this point, you said the construction firms.
They ordered stuff that, soft stuff that she can eat for the weekend.
Voice is coming from David.
All right.
Can I suggest that anybody who's not speaking should be muted? David Ginsburg.
David Ginsburg, do you have a question? Okay.
Actually, maybe somebody just had unmuted the microphone, but I think now, I was hearing some noise in the background. So
now
that's.
I have a question.
Richard Hartman has a question.
Yeah.
In conjunction with what you're talking about, Marcelo, and you and I have talked about a lot of this previously to this meeting tonight. Can you comment on what's going on in China right now with the real estate end and how that dovetails into all of their Belt and Road initiatives?
Actually, I wanted to refer that later on. I think let me just give you a picture of all the countries just to keep a certain order, Richard, and then we can refer to the real estate crisis of these days going on. Okay.
Okay.
So basically,
Steve, David Ginsburg had a question, but he's on mute. Can you unmute David Ginsburg, Steve?
Yes, hang on.
You were going to say something, Marcelo, or no?
I can. I'd rather keep going with the country examples, and then.
Yes, go. Keep going.
All right. So basically, what happened in this case was that at the beginning also China refused to renegotiate or to reschedule these huge loans, and then as you might recall last year, basically the government was left without foreign exchange reserves, and there was a political crisis, and you may recall watching on TV that the population just invaded the presidential palace and they were in the swimming pool. I'm not sure if you have that image present.
Yes.
But so basically here, I answer some of your questions. How come you're getting a loan to improve your infrastructure and suddenly the government collapses? It's an extreme case, but there are a few other countries nearing that. So In this case, basically, I would just qualify it in terms of a debt trap. In terms of the quality of the infrastructure, actually, is relatively well done. In fact, I have worked with some of those companies that constructed the ports and the airport, and on that there was relatively good due diligence. But in this case, basically, the debt trap is, that's how I would qualify the Sri Lankan experience. Now, in terms of geopolitics, what happened when China was taking over the infrastructure? Then suddenly India decided to mediate as a good neighbor. But of course, this is to take away some of the Chinese influence, and basically they help Sri Lanka negotiating with the IMF for a bailout. All right. So basically, what happened was India felt itself threatened by this, again, because of geopolitical reasons. And they help, first, they provided some emergency assistance in the beginning, and they were, very essential in the negotiations with the International Monetary Fund, to get some, funds that also help, assisted by other lenders that help to get the Sri Lanka out of this emergency situation. So if you can see in this example, there are many things that can be studied, and but it's a good example of what it could happen. Let me just quickly move to other countries. Now, in Cambodia, there is a naval base called Riam Naval Base that basically is pretty much close to completion. And of course, the U.S. has already raised concerns about the military use of the facilities. And now also there are some issues here in the South China Sea. So this military base in Cambodia is really strategically well located for any action that the Chinese may decide to take. Just before I arrived in the Philippines a few weeks ago, there was an incident where a supply ship from the Philippines Navy could not access one of their bases in the Spratly Islands because the Chinese patrol boats were spraying high pressure water to them. I mean, this came in the TV. I'm not sure if that was widely known in the US, but again, that's something I would tag as a military use of the facilities. Now, let me quickly move to Latin America.
So let me clarify one thing. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
The Spratly Islands, they belong to the Philippines.
Well, they are still under discussion. Is basically just let me tell you colloquially. Okay, the way it is now is basically you have a Philippines, Malaysia, even Singapore, Vietnam. Many other countries are, discussing about that. But of course, China says the South China Sea belongs to China. Period.
And I know they have taken over. And what you're saying is they blocked. They basically blocked a Filipino boat, right? Ship. Commercial ship.
Yes, with high pressure hose, So now what happened is 2 weeks later, another Filipino supply boat was able to deliver the goods. So I mean, again, there's a lot of standing high and a lot of sort of marketing intimidation that goes into it.
Okay.
All right. I mean, again, this discussion, is not exhaustive. I'm not an academic. I just want to put the issues on the table, and maybe some of them can go, deeper, or I leave it to you, to the academics and the research people, to see if they can find some light into this. But the situation exists. I mean, every couple of weeks there is some small incident in the South China Sea or around the Spratly Islands. Let me just quickly move to Latin America. Recently we have seen some events that on projects that have more to do with lack of transparency and lack of technical standards. Recently, we read that in Peru, the port of Chacay, which is being constructed by COSCO, which is the third largest container company in the world, and it's from China, of course. Basically, there was a tunnel collapsing, and that's attributed to technical issues, which eventually lead to lack of transparency in the designs and procurement process. In Guyana, there was an issue with the Matthews Reach Dam that collapsed and caused flooding in large parts of the country. Same thing, technical concerns, lack of technical standards, which again went back to lack of transparency. In Ecuador, we have the Proyecto Hidroeléctrico Coca-Codo Sinclair, same issues. In Argentina, also some news came about a couple of months ago, the port of Rio Grande in Tierra del Fuego, which, it's already, there is an agreement for potential petrochemical development with the port's facilities, but of course, there are concerns of military use, because this is in the south of Argentina. This links the, Pacific and Atlantic oceans, and again, of course, the U.S. and other countries were concerned about it. Now, let me just give you a couple of examples where this worked. Just not so you see, I'm not biased on this. Now, we have the case of Greece, where the historic port of Piraeus is now owned 67% by COSCO, the same firm, the third largest container in the world. And, they have a concession agreement. And, as a result, this was a win-win situation. This has been running for, I think, since 2017. And, the flow of goods increased. And, for all over Europe, the Greeks are happy, the Chinese are happy. And, it created development, created jobs. Now, based on that model, and this again just learned by preparing this this presentation. A couple of months ago, in Germany, the port of Hamburg also leased to COSCO 24.99% of the container terminal. I mean, again, this is port of Hamburg. It's something significant. There was questions from the German parliament, but government, after discussion and negotiations, decided to award that concession. So again, Luis, is not only countries that in Africa. We're talking port of Hamburg, port of Piraeus. So there are large and well-known pieces of infrastructure in the developed world that are also part of this initiative, and some of them, probably the least, and probably also has to do with the level of development of the country, have been working well, or there was a win-win situation. So again, this is in terms of coverage. I just wanted to give a few examples. Again, please, it's not exhaustive, it's not academic. Maybe this can provide some work later on for some of you which like to go deeper into the subjects. Again, I just want to put things on the table based on the literature and on my experience.
Yes, Marcelo, I would like to add another thing to what you said, which also includes the port of Haifa in Israel.
All right.
Haifa is also under Chinese control, and basically the Americans expressed concern. The Sixth Fleet has a presence on the port of Haifa, and they claim, we don't want to come here as long as the Chinese are here. So obviously they are expanding in the developed world, as you pointed out, Marcelo.
Yes, Luis. Let me make a note. On this. Again, I will go ahead of myself, but in my working life, there are two words that are very important: due diligence. All right.
Yeah.
So basically, if you have a good counterpart that can not enforce, but basically make sure due diligence is conducted, that the project is needed, is being done with good procurement, good technical standards. It could be a win-win situation. I mean, again, this is not that different than what we do at the ADB or our colleagues at the Inter-American Development Bank or the World Bank or other institutions. I mean, I was going to refer to that later, but since you bring it up, and I mean, again, I don't want to make conclusions, but for some reason in some developed countries, this initiative worked or is working. So
yeah, and that goes back to my first question, to what extent that brings benefits to the countries where there is Chinese investment. Now, let me ask you another question, and I'll jump to this question. Do you think the United States can compete with the Belt and Road Initiative? Jack Lew, former Secretary of Treasury, and maybe will be the next ambassador to Israel, we heard lately. He basically was the chairman of the task force on China. And he suggested that the United States has lost leadership, that we need to invest more in research and development, that we have not invested enough in technological development, in technical development. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that assessment by Jack Lew?
I fully agree with assessment, but let me contest you that that's necessary but not sufficient. I'm not sure that the U.S., and even some of the allies can compete or do something just to compete with China. I think you need more than that. And actually, and I will be biased on this, I think the U.S. and its allies should do it through the institutions that are already created, like the IMF, the World Bank, of which they are board members. They own those institutions, and they, that was the creation of the institutions. Was to do work on development projects, and they're doing so for, I guess, the World Bank for 75 years, and the ADB and the Inter-American Development Bank for about 50 years. So what Jean-Luc says is correct. But again, there were attempts to come up with other initiatives like America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity and Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, and also what they call the Build a Better World. There was something, the G7's Build Back Better World initiative in 2021. Have you heard about that? I have not.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of one country or 7 countries try to go against it, because I don't think the economies of the countries right now are in shape to just go against it or make a counterpart. I don't think the governments should take the burden of that due diligence that I just mentioned, which again will just duplicate existing institutions. So again, I'm biased on this because I work my whole life, my whole career was in international development, working for those institutions. So I know what they do, and I can tell you, I think they're well suited. They could improve, of course, but I think this is the channel. That's the best channel to make sure there is due diligence in the projects, that there is good dialogue, that there are no concerns, environmental concerns. They don't make worse the climate change issues that we're having right now. So again, you took me right to the end of the conclusion of my talk. But I think it's good to have a discussion on this, if you will, because I think that's the answer. It's not one country just going against it.
David Ginsburg.
I am seeing a very interesting question coming from David Ginsburg.
Right.
And
yes, David, go ahead.
If you want to read it, or I'll read it.
Go
Can
ahead,
you comment
Luis.
on the new BRIC countries alignment? Can you comment on China increasing its currency to grow as alternative to the US dollar? We know that this is what the Chinese are trying to do, and I know that Brazil has supported that initiative. What is your take on that? And do you think that cryptocurrency, for instance, could be used also as an alternative to the US dollar pushed by China?
Well, again, I knew this would come, and actually, I rather keep talking about the Belt and Road, but I will quickly refer to the BRICS. Basically, I think for the BRICS, we can do an in-person presentation when I go back to Palm Beach. But again, yes, the BRICS, they met, they had their meeting of the leaders last week. They attempted already to announce about the new currency. I think basically, of course, Russia, China, Brazil, they would like to have something else than the US dollar. However, what I hear is that India opposed to that. You have to remember, in the BRICS, you have India and China also. They are not the best of friends. They still have border disputes. And that's why, I just put it on the table, but, we're not going to solve it in the next 15 minutes. But yes, there are concerns of the BRICS. The BRICS, started with, basically was a BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. South Africa was added later on. But basically, this was created as what is called a new development bank based in Shanghai and by those countries. And again, the idea was to promote, an alternative to what we call the Bretton Woods institutions and to bilateral, assistance or aid from the Western powers, if you would call it. So they tried to create their own bank, and it's still ongoing. Now they expanded the membership to 6 countries. In fact, about 20 countries applied. This is something also has not been enough media or clarificatory media on this. For some reason, they accepted those specific countries. I think it's, 2 in the Middle East. Then you have Argentina in Latin America.
Iran.
Iran, yeah, of course. So they carefully selected the countries. I do not. Again, this is still work in progress. I rather expand at a later stage on this. But yes, the issue of the currency will keep coming. But I can send it back to you, telling you that. Are you aware of the amounts of physical gold that all central banks in the world are acquiring for the last year?
Yes, we've read something about it. Yes.
Okay, I just leave again. I put on the table. I don't expect any answer or any knowledge. Please, after the presentation, look at that, and you will be surprised. So clearly, particularly Russia and China are collecting huge amounts of real gold bars. And you'll be surprised, countries like the Czech Republic, Albania, others that you would not expect are doing the same. So this has something to do with the currency in the future. And let me leave it at that.
I have a question, Marcelo. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. And you may have touched on this, but China is overseeing the BRI, right? They're overseeing as they expand. Who's overseeing? I could be wrong. I don't think China has been terrific in the environmental world. As there's an expansion of BRI, is there any sort of international oversight in that regard?
No. Again, that's the whole point of the. Again, it's great because all of you are asking me great questions, which already have the answer into it. Yes, I think that's the reason. That's the reason. That's what I tell you. Some countries are desperate to get the aid, to get the funds, and to get the infrastructure, and not too much attention is paid to go back to due diligence, which covers environment, climate change, indigenous issues, gender issues, financial, all of that, technical, all of that, all of the above. So. And I can tell you, I know. I have negotiated with Chinese private sector, public sector. I can tell you it's very difficult, and they do not disclose the terms. Let me just put this issue of the port of Rio Grande in Argentina, and nobody knows the terms of the agreements with, under the BRI between Argentina and China. Nobody knows the interest rates. Most of the times they are commercial because, they come from commercial banks in China, which are not really. So in some cases, you will have countries getting money at 8% while they have while they could get money at 2%.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So no, there is no oversight. That's the problem. While
Yeah.
again, let me defend the Bretton Woods institutions. There is an oversight.
Okay, thank you.
No, very good. Anybody else would like to ask a question? I leave it open to the audience. Richard Hartman is saying something
So-
about human rights.
As long as we're waiting for others, I have another question. And that is, I know the United States is pushing back, right? Am I correct? They're not really involved in this at all. Marcelo?
Well, the United States is pushing back in terms of, you see that in the media, diplomatically, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But I have not seen any. Again, I mentioned 3-4 initiatives that were announced. I'm not sure that anything has been done on that.
Mm.
And again, that goes back to what Luis said. Even as a development banker, it's not important just to raise the funds to get the country programs to say, well, this country will receive 2 billion in the next 5 years, but it's important to get it down on the ground. And there are some colleagues in the audience that have done that. It's a very important implementation, and you have to consider, even if I give you $1 billion for a highway, you have to do preparing the bidding documents, do the procurement. Might take you 1 year just to break ground if you're lucky. And imagine countries with a low capacity. So again, when we raise $10 billion, how many years will take that to be on the ground and to have the beneficiaries? But again, I don't want to. All of these things again are done by the multilateral organizations and some bilaterals too. So again, I'm biased on this. Please allow me.
Okay. I think Richard has a question. Oh, you're unmuted.
I do. Thank you. Everything that you're talking about here and the apparatus in place in terms of the World Bank organizations and things, that's the way ultimately things need to get taken care of. But I got to come back to this, what's going on in China now, because it's unstable to that regime, especially if everything we're reading here with regard to how these large real estate companies are going to go belly up. That tends to take a nation to a unreasonable point. And I want to ask the question, how important or how likely is China to want to take Taiwan? Because that's going to upend everything you're talking about here. No?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I got you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Actually, on the real estate crisis, actually, this I must say is not as bad as you think. I've been reading
You went out,
a
Marcelo.
bit over the last few days. Basically, the Chinese, people have a lot of savings, and of course they use it to.
Something is wrong
Hello?
in
Yeah,
the audio.
you're breaking up, Marcelo.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can't hear your lips, see your lips move.
Hello.
Oh, yeah,
Okay
hold
now?
on. Can you hear us?
I'm here. I'm there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you're back. I think you're back.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
This real estate, you have to think that basically what's happening now is a softening of the market, but there is a lot of oversupply. All right. And actually the way the individuals, again, there is a lot of individual savings in China. So when they buy, these, condominiums, these huge buildings when they buy units, the money down required is quite substantial, much more than it is in the US. And also they take as collateral any of the assets you own, so there is no protection for the individual whatsoever. In fact, what I heard also is that the government wants to cool down this, oversupply, and probably this, they're not bailing out all these companies, that, and in fact, I saw there was one company that lost, 80% of stock value in Hong Kong this morning. But I'm not that concerned on that, the real estate, because, there's been oversupply for about 10 years now. So I think the government wants some sort of soft landing on that matter. And they're not telling you. So the way it comes in the media is quite catastrophic, but I don't think it is. In fact, they're doing the soft landing as the US is not doing it, and we might have a hard landing very soon. But again, not subject of this discussion.
But Marcelo, the question relates to how does this contribute to China's policy towards Taiwan?
In terms of Taiwan, I'm not sure that affects that much. I think it's a domestic issue. Now, again, Taiwan is always there for China to make noises, as it is the events I described in the South China Sea. Again, I don't want to say it's like Russia invading Ukraine, but I see this is a pure muscle political issue. So I would just leave it at that. Let's focus on the development and long-term issues. Somebody raised human rights. I think that was you, Richard. It's the same. It's the same. There is no oversight on that.
And there probably can't be. But the question I have again, would China be foolish enough to try to take Taiwan? In the real sense, all the posturing, all the politics, the votes in the China thing, that would be, and maybe I'm wrong about this, that would be an international problem, would it not?
Definitely, but actually, you'd be surprised that in out of the three main parties in Taiwan, two are pro-China. So there are people in Taiwan that also would like to be part of China. Again, we don't read it in CNN or CNBC, but there are out there. Being in Asia, you get media from other places also. So of course, will be great uproar. But again, you have to think there are people in Taiwan that see that would be better for for the development to be part of the bigger country. Again, if there is an armed conflict, of course, all these BRI, would come to a halt, I think, for some time. And you may see China calling on the debt from countries in Africa that today you don't even hear about it.
I hear what you're
So it can
saying.
create.
Again, not to belabor the issue, but the United States has been pretty adamant. And if China was to do anything, regardless of whether Taiwan wanted to be there or not, right now, we're not in a position other than that's a scary thought.
Right. Of course, that again goes away from the BRI. Yeah, if the US, takes a position, then of course this presentation becomes pretty much useless, and no more research can help us. So
let's hope that doesn't
again,
happen.
it's not that I'm shaking off. I'm not shaking off issues, but again, I just want to go back to good practice, due diligence. Look at what we have already that can do a lot of good, and use it as a tool.
Well, what do you think about this economic wars? Do you think that can we, in the United States, accomplish independence from China? Less dependence on China? Is there any way to move back
You're breaking up, Luis.
You're breaking up, Luis. I cannot
up.
hear you. Maybe
closer.
Talk to the machine.
Do you think that, at this point we have seen under the Trump and the Biden administration some sort of attempt to reduce our dependency on China? To what extent that can succeed?
The thing is, basically I say we, the Western world, a few decades back, sent all the manufacturing to China, right?
That's
For
correct.
whatever reasons. No, I don't think today. In fact, today, if China breaks up or if the US breaks up, which also there is a chance, we're all going to be in trouble. Yeah, you can manufacture, you can put some factory in Michigan or something, make a ribbon cutting, CNN, CBS News, whatever, makes a bit of noise for 15 minutes. It's not going to solve your root problems, So I think it's very important. Again, the US has to look, the US, the inflation and the money printing and, again, in fact, the rest of the world, and I tell you now that I'm sitting in the Philippines, they all worry about the US collapsing, not China.
That's another webinar.
If you want to talk politics, I can just put it on the table, but.
Yeah. But let's, as we wind down, we have a couple other questions. I want to make sure that Kate's question was answered. She was asking about real estate as well, and I think you had talked about that, but she's asking, can we get back to the question of real estate debacle in China and how it will affect the BRI? I think you may have addressed that.
I mean, I'm not sure because, as you can see, the government tries to keep very clear on that. And in fact, in Hong Kong, they're saying, look, you see, we do not bother the private sector. If these firms go bust, so be it. So the government is not getting involved. Now, if there was a case, I mean, it could be a case, but again, it's very hypothetical that China, instead of stopping construction around the world, could use the unemployed workforce of the real estate construction firms that cannot work in China for a number of years, so they can pump other projects somewhere else. But I think also to some extent they got the message that you cannot just construct and pump money that eventually you will put in trouble the countries, and eventually the countries will not be able to pay you back.
Well, I think we hit the 8 o'clock hour, and to stay on target, I think we should end it. I wanted to thank you. Luis may want to say a couple words as well, but I wanted to thank you for a terrific webinar and sharing your expertise and knowledge and educating us. Luis, did you want to say anything?
Well, all I want to say is that has been very enlightening, Marcelo. And you basically know things from within, from being inside. You are an insider in all this, having worked for so many decades in Asia. And right now you are speaking from Manila. That's something that I mentioned at the beginning of this program, and I will mention it again. He is right now in Manila, and we look forward to keep working with you. I invite you we invite you, not I, to write articles for us. And, hopefully the interest on this topic, which is a very important topic, and I think you covered it extremely well, will continue to have interest. So we look forward to keep working with you.
And
thank you so much, Marcelo.
And lastly, I wanted to thank all in attendance, right? Without your presence, it would just be the three of us talking. So thank you all for coming, and be sure to check out our website, palmbeachdemocracy.org, and look at our past programs. This program will be posted in the next 24 hours. And if you so will, please click the donation page. And with that, I thank everyone very much. Thank you, Marcelo, and hopefully we'll get to see you again here in Palm Beach. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, let me thank Luis and the center for inviting me. And I can see that some questions I could not answer. I mean, Luis, you can provide my contact. There are things in Africa that I have not even touched upon that I'll be happy to do. And if they can send me an email or a separate talk, I'll be happy to do that.
You can write your email just in case, and or I can write it myself
okay.
so that people can have it.
I will write it in the chat box
Okay, can you write in the chat?
before I hang up. So I see Saul. You can ask me that question through email, or we can have a talk. Again, thank you very much from Manila. I start Friday already,
Okay, I'm
and
sorry,
have a
we
good
missed
long
you,
weekend
Saul.
back in the US.
Okay, terrific. Looking forward to meeting you in person. Thank you again. Thank you all,
Yes,
and have a good
happy to
evening.
do that. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Marcelo,
Thank
when are you
you.
back here? When are you back here, Marcelo?
Mid of October, about the 14th.
Okay,
Let's
about
get
a
together.
month and a half.
Let's talk when you get back.
Hello, Alan. Good to
Yeah,
see you.
sure. Thank you very much.
Bye,
Have a
everyone.
good long weekend in the US. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.